All right, how's it going, you guys? Back to our inventory craft system. What we're going to go over now is the gathering and the building more in depth. Okay, so uh, from the uh, from the building standpoint, all we're doing is um, we're making a little menu here that will allow us to place things in the world when we click on the respected item. And depending on the game that you have, this is going to be different for everybody. You know, you could have a Rust style system to where it'll be from a menu. You could have like a H1Z one, where it'll be from a tab that you click, and then it's an item that's created in the world. Then you can consume that item, and then it'll instantiate it. At the mouse position. There's a million ways you can do it. I'm just doing it the simple way. Pretty much, this is like an RTS style way, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. Um, but I mean, if this was a person controller and your mouse was locked, you would just need to unlock your mouse, um, freeze the character, stop the movement, be able to click on something, and then if you click on something, in the menu here, then it'll lock your mouse again, and then enable the control the player. So this system can be used for first person and third person and top down games. So it's pretty versatile. So the only thing we're doing for the logic is we're setting the cost of this item. We're setting it to whatever item or whatever cost we want, which is 5. Other than that, we're pretty much just allowing people to put a icon here and change the text, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So now we're going to check the current status of the player. So inside of the player here, we have the logic for the building and the gathering, and that is relative to the animation that can be playing and the logic that's going to be happening. So pretty much what we want to do is when we're working, we want to set, or when we're building something, we want to set building to true, okay? And then from there, we can then run things. So let's say we walk up to, this, these mounds, of objects here. So if we're too far away, let me just show you this real quick. There's a distance mechanic that I put in here. So if we right click on these items to harvest them, it'll say that we clicked it, and then this click passed its layer pass, and then it says, okay, this is a valid item to be gathered, but the distance is too far to gather it. So what we can do is we can go ahead and move closer, and now we can work, we can start an animation, and then we can go ahead and gather the resource from that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move up to the tree here, play the animation, work, get everything done, and work. Granted, all controls, we disable control and everything for when we're doing the work there. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Other than that, everything is left to the building system here. So when we click on the item in the game here and we click on fence, it says, are we building? And if we're not building and we have enough wood in our inventory, then we can go ahead and create the instance of our prefab. Okay, so this is a fence, so we want to drag and drop fence into here. So go ahead and instantiate that prefab at the world position of the player, and we'll do 2 units in front of the player. And then we want to set the local variable in building system to itself. So pretty much what that's doing is it'll allow us to run all the logic in the building system from that item, specific to the item, which I'll show you in a second. Okay, then from there, we're obviously just doing the same thing as we did in the previous video, which is just we're taking away wood from the inventory. So we're just taking it, the wood, and we're minusing it from the cost that is set as a variable here. Okay, and then we're letting them debug. Then we're triggering the event building in building system, and then we're setting building in building system to true. So in building system, once we click on this item and everything passes, we're setting building to true. We're setting the object in building system to the fence, okay, and then we're allowing them to build. Now, if we have something out and it's in placement mode, so it's still following the mouse and we're still able to place it, and we press escape, okay, and we are building, so if we press escape, we're building, okay, and this is only relevant to this item here, so you're going to need to set the cost of whatever resource you're using per item. But if we press escape and we're building, we want to set wood to whatever the cost was that we took away from build, because remember, we're in placement mode right here. We want to give them back that cost, obviously, because now we're not building anymore and we didn't place the item. We want to destroy the object that we instantiated. Then we want to set the object that we created as a variable in the building system to null, and we want to set building to false. Okay, and this is just relative to zooming, because for the building system, I have you able to rotate the object with the mouse wheel, and zooming is also with the mouse wheel. So this is just something specific to that. You don't have to have this if you're not using that kind of system. So from placement, we're triggering the event building. Now in the building system, we have the spawn in place. So if we're building something and we press E, then we want to trigger the event placed. Okay, and then in placed, we want to set a nav mesh obstacle on the object to true. Granted, this is all game specific, so this is not going to be in your game, or it might be in your game if you're using, a certain type of controller. This is all subjective stuff. Then we're going to set object in a building system to false, set building to false, and then return the control to the camera again. Okay, and then the next, and this is an update. This is an update also. So now this is for placement. So we're in placement mode, okay, and we haven't placed the item and we haven't gotten rid of the icon or the item. Okay, now so this is an update saying if building is true, we want to set the nav mesh obstacle. Granted, like I said, this is game specific. You may not have this in your game, so you can delete this if you don't have that. Okay, what we want to do is we want to set the nav mesh to false, because we don't want it colliding with the player or anything while it's being placed. And we want to set the wheel position of that object to the mouse position. And we also want to say if building is true, and we scroll the mouse wheel in the negative or positive direction, we want to rotate it respectively. So I have it going by 15s. You could change that to lower or higher if you wanted to go, a certain way. You could do it by 30 or what have you. And then pretty much what we're doing is we're triggering building. This is a custom event. We set building true, and then set the zoom on the camera to false. And like I said, this part right here is just game specific, and building is the trigger event that we're setting here in build. So trigger the event and then trigger build. Now the animation is pretty much super simple. All you're going to do is reference this bool right here. So what you want to do is in your animator or animation, you would just say, we would do an update if building is true, set bool parameter in mechanism to hold on a second, sorry, you would just set the bool parameter in mechanism to true, and we would say and we would do this obviously for each thing that could be harvested. So a different animation will play for digging something up or chopping a tree down or mining something, right? So we would just do a bool parameter. So if building is true and bool parameter chopping wood is false, then we would trigger bool parameter chopping wood, and then if building is false, which remember it automatically gets set to false once our duration's done for harvesting the item, then we will set that bool to false, and then it'll stop playing our animation. So just as you get in action, we'll go ahead and enter the play mode here, and we'll walk up to something. Okay, now granted, we have no animation playing right now. We harvest something, the animation plays, and we haven't clicked anything, we stop harvesting, animation stopped playing. This is very rigid, obviously. You can see that this is just something that I demonstrated to show that you can play an animation while you're doing something, and it'll detect that. But yeah, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is reference this bool. Okay, now for the gathering system, it pretty much goes gathering logic, then gathering system. So don't worry about how I nested this. So yeah, pretty much this is an update, all just one event, and this pretty much just on update, it'll set the hover object to a custom block that I've made for you guys to the object that we're currently hovering over. So all throughout the game, it'll populate this hover object with whatever the mouse is over. So the fence, the player, anything that it can be hovered over that has a collider. Okay. No, actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure it has to have a collider on it. So then it'll populate that there. Okay, and then it'll set the hover type, which is this empty string here, to what we're hovering over. So these are the hover type is pretty much just for your reference. So if you're debugging and you want to look at what you're hovering over, what the tag of it is, then you could look. Okay. Now, speaking of the tags and the layers, for the demo here, what you're going to need to do is set a layer and set a tag. So we need a set layer gatherable, and gatherable needs to be set on layer 23 in reference to this if statement right here. If you set gatherable on layer 12 or 28 or what other layer, this needs to reference the index number. Okay, so right now we have gatherable on 23, so it needs to be this if check needs to be 23. You can't use a string and say is the layer of our current hover object gatherable, because this check looks for a return integer for the index, not a string. Okay, so keep that in mind. But moving on, this will pretty much check if we right click, it'll let us know we clicked. And then if our layer of our gatherable is correct, then it will let us know we passed the layer check. And then if our distance of the player and the world position of the object we're hovering over is less than or equal to the interact distance, okay, which is what we have set to 5. Okay, so later on down the line, if you want to extend that, you can do different distances for different objects. Right now, we're just going with a flat value. So if anything is in 5 units of the player, you can gather it. Okay, so if we're in gathering distance, then we want to check if we're working. If we're not working, then we want to set the job time to what we're hovering over, and each object obviously has its own time on it, which is what we can see if we click on the items. So vein is the gold, tree is the green, and plant is the yellow. Okay, and then it just has a ply box component on it, nothing inside, simply just a float right here. So 3. So each of these jobs can have any amount of time. If you're chopping a tree and you want it to be 50, then you can do 50 seconds. If you want the vein to take 5 minutes, you can do whatever that equates to in seconds. I have no idea off the top of my head, but yeah, so that'll pretty much get set off of that. And yeah, so we're setting the job time to the current job time in the object that we're hovering over. And then we're setting the working object and gathering system to, and this just gets set right here. So we're setting this variable in the gathering system to what we're hovering over. And then what we had hovered over, not everything we're hovering over, and then we'll set working in gathering system to true. So all these variables are getting set, lets us know we started the work. Now, if we, open that up. If we right click and we are already working, because like we said here, we set this to true once we already click on something. If we right click and we are already working, we just do an else and we let them know we're already doing something. Now in this block here, you can put, a set text, like a red text that can pop up on the screen that says you're already working on something or what have you. And then same thing for distance here. This is just debugs and post here. But if you want to show in game, you could have it do that. Whatever method you want to do, you would just put those inside here. So yeah, that's all that gets done there. And then inside the working logic, we will pretty much we'll check. This is an update. Okay, so if we are working, we want to stop the player, disable control of the player, and then run after our job time, which gets set previously from these here. Okay, we want to run this after the job time reaches 0. So now this is where everything comes down to the tags that we set for the things that can be gathered. Okay, so if we had right clicked on a tree, okay, and the job time reaches 0 for the tree, it'll say if the working object that's set here, which is a game object, if the tag of that game object equals tree, so the tag that we made here was tree, and then for our tree game object, we just simply put it as tag and tree. So its layer is gatherable, its tag is tree. Okay? So if our working object is tagged as a tree, then we want to let them know in the debug we're chopping this tree down. We want to trigger the event resume, okay, and then we want to set wood in our inventory miscellaneous, and this is obviously in our inventory miscellaneous, and then our wood. Okay, we want to set wood in our inventory to the current wood amount plus, and then if you want to, you can do a random range. For wood, it would be something reasonable. It wouldn't be like crazy amounts, but I just put a random range just so you can have some flexibility if you guys didn't know about random ranges. So yeah, pretty much what you would do is you would do that. You would just put a random range, or you can put a set value. So if you want to chop down a tree and you want to get 1 log from that tree, you would just put a 1 there, and that would be an integer. Okay, and the same thing goes for if we right clicked and then the logic runs, and if we end up having a tag of our working object equals plant, then we want to trigger our event resume, and the resume event is simply just it's a custom event that enables control of the player, sets working to false, disables the working object, and sets the working object in self to null. And this right here is your main thing that you want to do. So in your resume event, you would want to add any particles, any sounds, that you want happen when everything is done. Okay, so when you're done chopping this tree down, or if you're, mining a vein or something like that, and before that object gets disabled, you want to play like the vein explodes or something, and it plays a sound. That would be here. Okay, so yeah, that would just all be set there. And yeah, so pretty much what we have just right now is we're just disabling the game object once we're done gathering it. And then, yeah, so that's all you have to do. So for each item or each, type of thing that can be gathered, you just want to make 1 of these for each. Okay, so this can be it can be a very big list, for each item that you may have, or it could be a small list. I know most games only have a few, choice things that can be gathered. So, I mean, most of the time your list won't run past, like 10 or 11 things that can be gathered, but that's all game specific, just depends on what you're doing with that. So, yeah, make sure you don't have this debug enabled. This will tank your frame rates. Yeah, it's bad. Just don't enable it. This was just for a debug that I did, so I know when that this state was being set, before our job time reaches 0. So just keep this disabled. You don't want to enable that. Okay, and yeah, that's all you have to do for gathering and building. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this one plugin. If you guys want, I can make other tutorial videos for the other plugins that I have. So yeah, you guys enjoy. Let me know if you have any questions. You could PM me on the forums, or you can post in the actual thread for this. I'd rather you post in the actual thread, obviously. So, if you have an issue that someone else has an issue with, they can also, get their answer from that. But yeah, have a good time, working with the tool, you guys.